Hello, everybody. Lobotomized Logan back today, and I will be rating my favorite Nintendo Switch games of this generation. We have about 8 years behind us, and we have another 8 years ahead of us for the Switch 2 if it sells anything like the original did. And I played it religiously for about 6 of those years. I did end up selling it off in 2022. However, I feel I can give my opinion on my personal favorite games for the system. So, whether you are a newcomer to the original Switch or looking for games to play on your shiny new handheld in a month, this is the list for you. However, I do have some ground rules. So, the first one is no remakes. Stuff like Super Mario RPG is a wonderful game, I'm sure. But one, I have not played it, and two, it is a remake at its core. It is an SNES game. Second rule, only games that I have played will be here. So, no Tears of the Kingdom or Bayonetta 3, as I stopped playing my Switch before those came out. And then the final and most important rule of all, this is an opinionated list. If your favorite game is on here, good. If it's not a slight against you. It's just what my personal opinion is and what I think are the defining games of this generation. So, with that being said, let's get into the list. Super Mario Odyssey is my favorite 3D platformer on the Nintendo Switch, and my favorite 3D Mario game, period. The main gimmick of this game is Mario has a living cap called Cappy, which you can throw at enemies and take over the bodies, as you can see here with the dinosaur. You can take that over. It allows for some really cool gimmicks, but removing the gimmick from the game entirely wouldn't have affected my enjoyment. This right here is basically Super Mario 64 2 minus the cap gimmick. Everything in this game is built upon every single Mario game that came before it, and it is a wonderful culmination of the series. It is 7.5 years old, and while I would love to have a new Mario game, this is the standard they need to achieve from now on. This is Mario at its most refined and finest. The game also runs phenomenally well for a launch year Switch game between 900p and 1080 at 60 frames per second, and it is confirmed to be getting a Switch 2 upgrade. What that means is this game will run even better, perhaps even offering 120 FPS mode in both handheld and docked, but we'll have to wait and see for the Switch 2 edition. Overall, Mario Odyssey is a phenomenal game. It is one of the major tentpoles of the Nintendo Switch's lineup, and even 8 years later, it is still sitting with the top dogs of exclusives after several games made by Nintendo that have attempted to crack that top 10 list. I cannot wait to play Donkey Kong in July because it looks like it's being made by the same team. But with all that being said, this is one of my favorite Nintendo Switch games. You like 3D character action brawlers? You like cyberpunk environments? Well, then Astral Chain is the game for you. Directed by Takahisa Tora, who was previously lead game designer for Nier Automata, and supervised by the legend Hideki Kamiya, known for Devil May Cry and Bayonetta, it is a wonderful character action game. It takes place in the year 2078 on a city called the Ark, a bustling megacity on a man-made island where humanity has been relegated to because they've about gone extinct. You can play either the male twin or the female twin in this game, and the basic gist of the combat is you are connected to this thing called the astral plane, which is what these cyberpunk looking guys are. You are directly linked with them, and you can control both of them. Your main goal is to help fight off anomalies as you are a part of the Ark City Police's special department that deals with alien threats. It is a very story driven game with extremely well rounded action, combat, and gameplay. And it is by far one of the best looking Switch games, despite the fact that they had so little work with in terms of power. If you're a fan of Bayonetta, Devil May Cry, Ninja Gaiden, really anything character action wise, this game would be right up your alley. And I'm sure the Nintendo Switch 2 will smooth out some of these frame drops as it will be running a software simulation of the Switch games. And the final thing to note is this game is almost 6 years old, so if you want a physical copy, I would go ahead and try and get one now, as it goes anywhere between $40 to $70 on eBay, and it is out of print, as again, the game is 6 years old. Overall, best character action game on Switch. The most iconic party brawler of them all, with a tagline that made the world lose their mind: everybody is here. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is one of the best fighting games on Nintendo Switch, with a myriad of characters, both first and third party, in a gaming Hall of Fame setting, showing its appreciation to everything that has came before it. It is by far one of the biggest bang for your buck deals on the Nintendo Switch. With 8-player multiplayer in a variety of modes, ranging from a story mode to using amiibos to just straight up online play, this game has hours upon hours upon hours of content for you to do. Not even touching on like the full story of World of Light, it is a wonderful single player campaign and experience as you go through unlocking the characters to inevitably defeat the final boss. It is such a wonderful game. Not to mention the amazing DLC this game got from old school characters such as Banjo Kazooie, Kazuya, Terry Bogard from King of Fighters, to newer characters such as Pyramithra from Xenoblade and Steve from Minecraft. Sadly, no Jack Blackskin, but I digress. This game is well worth the cost of entry and even the $55 for the DLC. You don't have to buy all of them because I'm sure there are some characters that are hit or miss, like Byleth, but Steve, Sora, Kazuya, Banjo Kazooie are all iconic characters in a very fun and very well running game. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 is a Nintendo published sequel to a wonderful Diablo clone from the early 2000s. And even though they tried doing MCU synergy with the designs, we still didn't miss out on things like the Mutants or the Fantastic Four. This game does not exclude anyone, unlike certain other Marvel projects around the same time. With 3-player co op in every aspect of this game, no matter if it's the story mode or side content, you don't have to leave anybody behind. As for the story, it mainly takes place around Thanos and him trying to collect the 6 Infinity Stones. However, you will see other Marvel characters that you might not expect in the story mode, especially considering you're dealing with a cosmic threat such as Thanos. Overall, the story is very interesting and very fun for comic fans. The game doesn't just stop at the story mode. There are infinity levels you can do, which are time trials and tests of power. But another thing is if you want this game, I'd recommend getting it physically now, as along with the Astral Chain. This game was printed back in 2019, which means it's no longer in print. However, it is highly recommended, and let's move on to my next game. What can I say about Nintendo's swan song to the Wii U and launch title that hasn't been said at this point? It is by far my favorite Legend of Zelda game that I have played and beat. It took the Zelda formula, completely flipped it on its head, and made it an open world akin to Skyrim, and it really worked out well for Nintendo. The story, the gameplay, and the lore are all very deep, with hours upon hours of gameplay and very strong and tight combat. This is one of the most easily recommendable games on the system if you only have money for one game. That's because it has hours upon hours upon hours of content. In my own personal save, I have about 65 to 70 hours in it, and I don't even think I cracked 75% completion. This game is super innovative for Nintendo. It's the first time they really took on an open world on a scale like this. And while it does suffer some shortcomings, it is overall a very fun game to play, as this game lets you truly play it your own way. You go through and you have to take down 4 big shrines to help fight off Ganon at Hyrule Castle. However, you can say F that noise and go straight to Ganon and fight him in the first hour of the game, if you so choose. So you can clear this game in 30 minutes if you want. But the real depth of it comes from the shrines, comes from the story, which is at a forefront for the first time in Zelda history. The game also has a pretty sizable DLC expansion, including a new Cave of Trials, Master Mode, and the Champions Ballad DLC. It is also getting a Nintendo Switch 2 edition that will run at 1440p 60 in docked and 1080p 60 in handheld, if the reports are to be believed. Last thing of note is that the physical edition for Switch 2 will not include the DLC, so you will have to purchase that separately. But on to the next one. Fire Emblem Three Houses is what happens when the teacher decides to join one of the cliques in school and then beat the crap out of every other student. It is wonderful. Kidding, of course. However, the game does take place bulk in a school as you are a professor of a monastery. About partway through the story, it gives you the option to split into three houses, hence the name Fire Emblem Three Houses. And the game's replay value is off the charts, as each route, while different, gives you a different viewpoint of the series that I will not spoil. It's your standard affair expected from Fire Emblem, tactical RPG, units on a board, you move them, and then you do the attack. You also have the option to turn off permadeath in this game, as that mechanic might be too hard for some newcomers to the series, which I understand why Nintendo put that in there. However, if you do want to play it in the way that the Fire Emblem devs intended, you will keep permadeath on, which basically means that any one of your units that die. It is high stakes. But that's just the combat. In the game, you play in the monastery where you can run around, talk to your students, improve relationships, and then increase your stat points. It is very much like the social system in Persona games, but with a fantasy coat of paint. Overall, one of my favorite tactical RPGs, and the trend of good DLC doesn't end here. As if you've exhausted the other three paths, you can buy the DLC for a fourth one that's different. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is not only my favorite Nintendo Switch game, but it is my favorite role playing game of all time, full stop. The game starts off with you playing as Rex, a salvage diver, and also a young teenager, and you pick up the wrong package, ending up linking yourself with this woman named Pyra, who is a blade. Which means you've made an enemy out of the world, as she is the rarest blade and the key to unlocking something called Elysium, which everybody wants for themselves, so congratulations, you're outlaw number one. The game takes place over many environments named Titans, living beings who can die off, but the main gameplay draw comes from drivers and blades. You may be linked to Pyra, but unfortunately for her, Rex doesn't believe in monogamy with his blades, as you can have several other blades, and you are considered what they call the master driver, which means that you are able to connect yourself with any amount of blades, no matter the synergy. Which means combat is super in-depth and detailed, as Pyra isn't the only blade you can have. You can have several other blades and elements such as water, lightning, ground, and overall, it is a very deep and intricate system when you get into it. When you start off the game, you might have some synergies and some combos, but the late game is when stuff gets really interesting, as you can stack up millions of damage points with these chain attacks when you get later into the game. This is also a really good introduction to Japanese RPGs for people who haven't played them. Granted, I will say, if you're not a massive fan of anime aesthetics or the tropes, this game will most likely not be for you, as it heavily leans into shonen-inspired tropes and jokes. And finally, we have another game with an amazing expansion pass with Torna the Golden Country, which is an entire new game, basically. It is a 20-hour expansion pass that you get for buying the season pass, or you can buy it physically. Which is the sad part about this. As this game was printed back in 2017, I don't believe it's in print anymore, which means if you want a physical copy, you will have to hunt it down, and you're looking at $60 to $80 for a North American physical copy. This game also is not confirmed to get a Switch 2 version, which is very unfortunate, as the graphics can be lacking, as it is a launch year Switch game, and Monolith didn't know exactly what they were doing at that point. But overall, heavily recommend. My favorite RPG and my favorite game on the Nintendo Switch. And just listen to some of this music. Just an amazing piece of art, an amazing game overall. With that being said, like, follow, subscribe. Tell me, are you getting a Nintendo Switch too? And will you pick up any of these games I recommended? Let me know in the comments below. And with that being said, I'll see y'all next time. Lobotomized Logan, out.